I am the only international student majoring in English at the Behrend campus of the Penn State University. I am perhaps the first Chinese student who chooses English as my major throughout Penn State Behrend history. All of the classes I have taken are conducted in English, and I use English on a daily basis. I use it to articulate my idea, express my emotion, describe a story, and share my experience. I even dream in English. And psycholinguists will tell you that this suggests English has become a language equivalent to my home language. It is part of my life and part of the world where I live. However, as many of you may have noticed, English is not my first language. It's actually my second language. My mother tongue is Chinese, and I also use it daily to communicate with my friends in China, my students from China, and all of my family members. It is not only part of my life and part of my world, it is also part of myself. Having the ability to negotiate or speaking two languages oftentimes gives me an invaluable perspective to think beyond borders. Generally speaking, borders means a physical line separating two geographical or political areas, like the international boundaries separating US and Canada. Borders also represent the edge of something, like the edge of this stage where I am standing right now. However, according to Gloria Anzaldúa, the famous Chicana theorist, borders physically present wherever two or more cultures edge each other, where people of different races occupy the same territory, where under, lower, middle, upper classes touch, and where the space between two individuals shrinks with intimacy. In other words, borders are social spaces where people from different backgrounds meet, clash, and grapple on one another, like what we're doing right here, right now. Within borders are borderland boundaries that differentiate us from each other: our race, color, age, sex, gender, sexuality, nationality, our culture, and the language we speak. Here, I'm not only referring to different types of languages like Chinese, English, Arabic, French, Japanese. I'm also referring to the varieties within the same language: American English, African American English, British English, Canadian English, etc., etc. Language is like the air we breathe. It shapes us in a way that seems second nature, and this is what I'm going to talk about today: language. Specifically, I want to describe the meaning of being a bilingual student in a monolingual English-speaking environment. I will begin with how I acquired my mother tongue, Chinese. Then I will move to how I conquered my second language, English. Eventually, I will interpret these experiences to illuminate the way through which we can use our languages to think and act beyond borders. So let me begin with describing how I acquired my mother tongue, Chinese. I use the word mother tongue because it best reminds me of where I learned it from. I was a late speaker. I didn't start speaking until the age of 3, when many children at my age in China were able to say simple words like ma, mother, ba, father. I did not experience that stage. The moment I started speaking, I was able to speak in fluent sentences and even passages. So my grandmother and my mother decided to cherish this talent by teaching me classic Chinese poetry. So every day, my grandmother would teach me to memorize one classic Chinese poem. She first read it in Mandarin, then instructed me to repeat with her. Then she would explain the meaning to me, and then I repeated with her over and over again. The next day, before she taught me a new poem, she would ask me to recite what I learned the other day and explain it to her. Sometimes my interpretation was similar to hers. Other times, my interpretation became something completely different. Nevertheless, my grandmother did not try too much to correct me because she thought poetry interpretation should be something personal and subjective. And right here, I'm going to share the first classic Chinese poem I ever remembered. It's called Returning Home, written by poet He Zhizhang, which is a very famous Chinese poem in the Tang Dynasty, approximately 1,100 and 1,300 years ago. I will read it in Chinese right now, but I will bring back the English version when I finish my talk today. 回乡偶书，贺知章。少小离家，老大回。乡音无改，鬓毛衰。儿童相见不相识，笑问客从何处来。I bet many of you did not understand what I just said. But you could feel the emotion. You could feel the rhythm that I put in my voice. You could see all the facial expression on my face. That's how I grew up. One classic Chinese poem every day. And gradually, by the time I entered elementary school at the age of 6, I was able to memorize, recite, and explain more than 200 classic Chinese poems. And my speaking skills and reading skills in Mandarin were phenomenal. And having the ability to speak fluently in Mandarin really gave me a variety of academic and social privilege when I was at school. All of the teachers adored me because I spoke so well, and I succeeded in all of the classes related to Chinese language, culture, literature, communication. And I was able to use this ability to relate to parents, students, and teachers on personal levels. I helped teachers run workshops. I helped them facilitate in-class activities. I even took leadership roles in different school clubs and organizations. So Chinese language became a tool for me to demonstrate myself, to succeed. And the more I practiced this language, the more benefit I got to enjoy. And the more benefits I enjoyed, the closer I became with the Chinese language. So 2 years after I entered elementary school, when I was 8 years old, I started to acquire English as a formal second language. But this experience was something completely different from my Chinese experience. So my mother enrolled me in this elementary English program in a foreign language school in my city. The instructor was a white native speaker of English. Great teacher, great lady with great personality. And I still remember her name is Jessica. So Jessica and I, we met on a weekly basis along with other 10 to 12 kids who also wanted to learn English. She made the class like a hoopla. I mean, we got to learn different adjectives, verbs, and nouns, especially nouns for different food. If you know me that well, I'm a big fan of foods. And we got to learn different sounds for ABC and 1, 2, 3. There was no competition, no pressure in the classroom environment. I learned this language for fun. It was only the pleasure of discovering the beauty of another language. So no competition. However, this sense of enjoyment completely changed itself the minute I landed in Connersville, Indiana, which was in 2011. I participated in an international foreign exchange student program. And I lived with a US family for 10 months. Back then, my English skills, especially my reading and writing and grammar skills, they were all right. But what really bothered me is how English could be practiced in oral communication. I mean, when a guy came to me and say, "Hey buddy, give me 5," my intuitive reaction was not to clap his hand, but put my own hand in my pocket, take out $5 and put the $5 in his hand. And he took the money, which is not cool. And when my little brother from my host family said, "Hey Arthur, the food is on the house," I said, "No, it's not right. It's not on the house, it's on the table." I mean, how would I know something on the house means something free? How would I communicate with native speakers of English if I don't know their oral language? What kind of facial expression should I wear if I hear people say lake effect, which many of you right here, you know how to react. These questions alerted me and pushed me to acquire English. And at that moment, the pleasure of learning English for fun became the desire, the need to learn English for survival. I had to learn it, I had to learn it well, and I had to master it as if it was my own language so that I could live in this country. So I immersed myself in this English language environment. I took cell phone with me every day to record people's conversation. I listened to different English radio programs and watched different shows just to mimic different accents. And the obsession I had with English language learning became so strong that one night, I woke up from a dream in Chinese. And instead of falling back to sleep, I sat on my bed thinking how the dream could be if it was in English. That's how obsessive I was. That year's learning experience was really difficult and intense, but it was really rewarding because that's how I developed fully in my listening and speaking skills. And now I am fluent in both of these languages. So having the ability to negotiate in both Chinese and English sometimes bothered me. I keep thinking about what's the meaning of being a bilingual? What is my relationship with the languages I speak? What is the relationship between the languages, within one another? And these questions bothered me for a long while until I came to Penn State Behrend in 2013 and became the ESL Teaching Assistant at Behrend's English Language Learners Program in 2014. So in the fall semester of 2014, my supervisor and I, we had 13 students in our ESL basic writing class. Not a big class, but it was extremely diverse and dynamic because the 13 students actually came from 8 different countries or regions across the globe. Of course, my supervisor and I, we told the students to only speak English after they entered the classroom door. We gave this monolingual instruction not because we disrespected or disvalued their home language. We gave this instruction simply because we wanted to address the course purpose of helping these students acquire academic English. But this instruction, this monolingual direction, did not take away the powerful potential for students raising cross-lingual conversations. One day, I was sitting next to the classroom door, observing how my students interacted with each other. You know, that kind of observation was completely informal or unintentional. And I saw this one Chinese girl use fluent Mandarin to share a joke with another girl who's also come from China, sitting next to her. I didn't capture all the details of the joke, but apparently it was a very good one because the 2 girls ended up laughing. At the same time, one male student from Iraq, but was already a US citizen, he heard the girls laughing and he used English to ask one of the girls to translate the joke to him. So one of the girls did. The translation was not 100% perfect, but she got the meaning because right after he heard the joke, he began laughing and he immediately used Arabic and English to code switch the joke to his brother who's sitting on the other side of the classroom. And they started laughing. At the same time, one African-American student leaned his back against the chair, eavesdropped everything. I could see that on his face. He had this huge smile on his face. He understood everything. So it ended up 4 students laughing at the same time. None of these students spoke the same home language. None of these students practiced English the same way as their peers did, but they ended up understanding and comprehending one another. They shared the same kind of pleasure and joyfulness. And that smile, the smile on my students' faces was so powerful and so authentic that I ended up put a smile on my face that I didn't even know. After that day's class, one student came to me and said, "Arthur, did you hear us tell the joke? Because you were smiling at us when we were talking that joke, and it was really creepy, when you smiled at us." That's how I knew I smiled anyway. After the students left that day, I stood in front of this classroom door. I stared at the door, thinking if I had posted a sign on the classroom door telling my students that only English language could dominate this social space. And the answer came pretty quickly. It could not. Even though my students did not share the same home language, even though they practiced English completely differently from each other, it didn't prevent them from deconstructing this monolingual sign and turning it into an anchor that triggers their multilingual or cross-lingual experiences. Right now, I still tell my students to only speak English after they enter the classroom door. I even gave that same instruction like 4 days ago. But deep in my heart, I know how fragile and how vulnerable that instruction can be, and how easily we can use our own languages to communicate not across, but beyond the language borders that separate us from different culture and linguistic backgrounds. So let me interpret everything, all of these experiences. Yes, I am the only international student as an English major at Penn State Behrend, and I am perhaps the first Chinese student who chooses to major in English at my college. But this form of onlyness is not an isolation that separates me from my peers. It is not a distinction that says, hey, you're different from us. I speak English because it's related to my field of study. It also reflects my passion for language learning. And it happens to be the language that we share, the conventional language that we speak in this room, at this community, and in this country. I also speak Chinese. It's my mother tongue. And every time I speak it, it embodies the poetic memories that I had during my childhood education. When I speak English, I am experiencing this ongoing battle that I have had, that I tell myself, you have to conquer this language. It's a promise that I gave to myself as a language learner. When I speak in Chinese, I am displaying my community and the profound Chinese culture in which I come from. These languages empower me, inspire me, and will hopefully empower and inspire every one of you to use your languages to think and act beyond the borders in your daily walk. And at this moment, I would like to bring back the Chinese poem that I shared at the beginning of my talk, but this time it's going to be in English. Returning home, He Zhi Zhang. I left home young and came back when I grew old. My mother tongue is unchanged, but my hair no longer black. Innocent children don't know me, whom I meet on the way. Where are you from, sir? Smiling, they say. Thank you so much.